Hello and welcome back to More Than a Lumpy Jumper. This week, in recognition of World Sleep Day on the 14th of March, Bridget and I are going to be looking at the critical role sleep plays in self-care and its profound impact on leadership and overall well-being. So many leaders seem to wear exhaustion as a badge of honour, but what if sleep and self-care stopped being perceived as indulgences and actually became part of a leadership strategy? We will make our usual attempt at speaking to the science, the impact of not taking sleep seriously, and I'd like to make a huge shout out for napping. Of course, there will be more, so come and take a listen to Being Your Own Retreat. Well, hello Bridget, and how well slept are you today? To do that in the intro, that would have been even funnier, just like snored all the way through it. It actually puts me in mind of the quote I was going to use at the end, but it seems very apt to use it now because then I can use another one. But I like the quote I found, which was laugh and the world laughs with you, snore and you sleep alone.
I wish someone would tell my husband that. Actually, although it's probably right at the moment, bless him, because he is having to sleep alone, because I'm not with him. Poor thing.
No, absolutely. And in an environment where I'm not sure quite how much sleep is easy to come by. So would you like to say something of that before we start?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned it in one of our sessions, maybe last week or the week before, just that I, having gone back to working in sort of conflict, unpredictable security situations and locations, that I had spent a lot of time prioritizing sleep since I've got back to work, and that I'd found that was really helpful in terms, I think we were talking about resilience actually, and obviously maybe we're going to talk a little bit more about how sleep impacts on resilience. But yeah, I've been really trying to prioritize sleep, and that has been working, but I've just come back off leave actually, so I should be really rested. But the travel has really sort of messed with my head, and you know, I've had to be getting up at 3:00 in the morning to get planes and stuff. And so I got back to work on Monday, and I'm just exhausted for 2 days now. I'm just totally exhausted, and my brain isn't clicking like it normally does. I'm a bit sluggish. However, when I was really sleep deprived, when I used to work in these environments before, I'd get cranky. And actually, I haven't been so cranky. In fact, someone told me I was patient today, which is not usually an adjective that's attributed to me. And so I'm just thinking that maybe I'm just too exhausted to be able to be reacting in the normal way. I don't know if you can see my new necklace. Is it back to front?
I can. So I think it says something like, fuck this shit, is it? Ah, lovely. Is that wear and resist jewellery by any chance?
Yes, it is. I also have the crone one. So I was wearing the crone one yesterday, but today I needed to just be wearing. So I was sitting in a meeting with my team, and they were looking, and they were like, everything okay? And I'm just like, I'm just really tired. Just really tired today.
Well, I think I said to you before we actually started recording, when you said about, and I laughed the first time that you used the word patient on yourself, and it's still making me chuckle a bit, but it's not a word.
Rude?
No, not rude, just honest.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
But it's not a word that's really levied at you any more than it is levied at me. But I think I said the quote that somebody said to me at one point was, just put it in the fuck it bucket and move on, which I absolutely love. But I think it underplays what is actually going on if we are lacking in sleep, or we're exhausted, or we're tired, or we're cranky, or whatever it might be. And when I did make my attempt, although this is bad, I should leave the science bit to you because you are incredibly more sciencey than I am, so you can correct me and school me if you want to. But the bit I found on it, which was said that it is a biological process which is essential for cognitive function and regulating the emotions and physical health. I was like, oh my God, so that's quite a lot. It's quite loaded in all of that, because the brain is actually consolidating memories, it's processing information, it's actually clearing out metabolic waste products as well. And whilst we're sleeping, it undergoes repair and growth. which is why it's actually helping the metabolism and your immune system. So, on the one hand, from a cognitive perspective, it's impairing our problem solving ability, our creativity, how we make decisions. It impairs judgment. We can be irritable, but equally, it then goes into obesity, diabetes, heart conditions, the whole works. And so it really is a massive fundamental in self-care. And I don't take it lightly when often I'm talking to my coaching clients and say to them, what's your sleep like? What's your routine? Because often with many of the people that I am talking to, which is why I said in the intro, that badge of honour about being busy or tired or whatever it might be, and leaders or just in general people thinking that they've got no choice. I'm not going to get caught by a bolt of lightning myself when I see this, because I know that I try and push through a lot of the time myself, when in fact I should just stop because I am bloody tired and I'm not making good decisions and I'm not doing my best work. So I'm just wondering for you, in the pressured environment that you now are in, what's your plans for, because you can't, that's the other myth, you can't catch up on sleep. So what do you do to get back into that calibrated mode that, if people are listening to our other episodes when you said, I'm in such a different place now because I'm getting the right amounts of sleep, and there's something about what you can do for yourself now to get yourself back there.
Yeah, I don't think Maggie Thatcher did anyone any favours. I mean, regardless of what political persuasion you are, when she sort of made that statement about getting by on 4 hours sleeping out or something, and sort of set this hustle culture standard of this, as you say, this badge of honour about not having any sleep. So I'm, and I do come across leaders who will be like, well, I'm a workaholic. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I work through and will send emails and expect responses at 5 o'clock in the morning and then berate people for not doing so. So there's a couple of things that, one, I do for myself, but also for my team, because I try and model all this now, because I think it's so important that effectively the standard that the leader sets is really what people start to think is the normal, what's expected. So I get a lot of alerts, notifications on my phone for various reasons, and I've made it clear that after a certain time you may well have some sort of the tips for getting good sleep, but there's one that talks about turning off from work. I think it's 2 hours before you go to sleep, 10 hours before you sleep, stop drinking coffee, 3 hours before you go to sleep, stop eating and don't have any alcohol, and then 2 hours stop working, and then obviously trying to not get blue light, 1 hour before turn off electronics, and then just go to fucking sleep. So I do try and have a boundary, and I put do not disturb on my phone, and so if it's an emergency, a true emergency, people can call me. Don't turn my phone off, but I turn all the alerts off. Just turning back to the sciencey thing, all of those things that you said are correct. But one other thing that's important, particularly when we talk about resilience, I guess, is that sleep allows our brain and the rest of our body to regulate hormones. And so things like cortisol, our cortisol goes up at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So there's a peak of cortisol, but during the night, it should go down. And so there's a cycle in terms of our cortisol, which we know is one of the stress hormones. And so if you don't get sleep and your cortisol doesn't drop and stays at a high level, you end up kind of overwhelmed with cortisol. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people hold fat around their stomachs is cortisol. They call it a cortisol belly. It's because they have too much of this stress hormone all the time. And so it's related also to stress. So you can't de-stress your insulin levels, all of those things. So that's why it impacts diabetes. That's why it impacts obesity, why it impacts so many other things. So, all those pinging of little alarms, alerts, messages, it causes a stress response, because you're always like, I need to check this. I need to check this. You can't relax. And so I turn on the do not disturb on my notifications. I went through a phase when I think I should spend less time on the internet. I bought these glasses that are supposed to reduce your blue light thing, and I don't know, it looked ridiculous. I bought a set for Mohammed, a set for me, and he just looked at them and went, yeah, fuck off, I'm not wearing those. And I tried them for about, I don't know, an hour or something, and they just didn't fit properly, and I was just like, it's odd. I think you can actually get slides you can put across your screen that are supposed to do that, and I maybe should do that. I do set it on my phone though, so there's a thing you can set on your phone that at a certain time it turns off the blue light, so I've got that. And I do things like have a night ritual. You know, I brush my teeth, I do my beauty routine, blah, blah, blah. I keep meaning to have a meditation or do some tapping, and I haven't done that. The one thing that again, Mohammed thinks is really funny is, and this thing about having a comfortable bed, especially when you're traveling or you're sleeping in a bed that's not yours, is, and you can't really do much necessarily about the mattress, but I take my pillow with me, which is, I look like a fucking princess wherever I go. Like, I turn up to a hotel and I've got my own pillow, and the guy on the reception's going, we do have pillows in the beds, right? I'm like, yeah, but you don't have my pillow, not with my silk pillowcase to stop my wrinkles, and the memory foam with the special shape that just I'm used to. And I haven't had it for the last, I've been here for about 8 weeks, and I went on leave and I hadn't had it, and I was like, I don't care how much I have to pay to have extra luggage, I'm bringing my fucking pillow back with me. And much as I'm still not sleeping properly because I've been travelling, the comfort that I felt when I put my head on that pillow and went, oh, this is my space, I can relax now, is really important.
Thinking of the pillow, I saw, you know, the amount of promotions that we actually get. So this is, oh look, me looking at a screen, a blue screen that you've just said not to, and me skimming through things and looking at adverts. But I came across what looks like a very tight blanket tube, is the only way I can describe it. I think I'd be utterly claustrophobic in it, but seemingly it's like giving yourself a hug.
I want one now. Send me the link.
I know, right? So, you know, like when they say about swaddling a baby, you know, that they wrap them up very tightly because they feel safe. Well, I'm guessing it's the same concept for us. And you can get one that is slightly looser but same effect, but there's one that you're just completely trapped in, which would make me feel like I was in an MRI machine and probably be like, get this off me, because I feel claustrophobic.
Have you ever had a weighted blanket? Have you ever used a weighted blanket? Because I use that at home and I love it.
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't, but I know people who have and swear by them, and I think it's all of it. So all those things that because I think you also mentioned about get rid of the caffeine, get rid of the alcohol. So the whole hydration thing is really, I know, but the whole hydration thing is really important, and you've clearly created boundaries. So I'm trying to get better. If Ash is listening to this, he's like, yeah, bullshitter. But I'm better than I was, but still I'm very much a work in progress. But one screen. So if I'm watching telly at night, put your phone down, because I was terrible for that, because I can feel myself dozing off. I think it's too early to go to sleep. If I doze off now, I'm going to be awake in the middle of the night. So I then pick up a screen to keep myself awake, which is nuts, because Ash is always saying to me, if you're tired, just go to sleep. Because at the back end of that, which is quite interesting with what you were saying about the cortisol piece, is that I've also seen, and again, I haven't looked into this very much, but there is another Instagram group, but it's talking about the 5 a.m. club. And I think the premise, and I sort of get it, is going, if you're awake at 5, don't try and struggle to go back to sleep. Get up, because your cortisol is already on its way up if you're saying it's the sort of like 5 o'clock in the morning, and get some stuff done, whatever it might be. So I've been trying it out, but I think that what you can't end up doing is going, okay, right, I'm up at 5 now, and I'm still going to work through until 9 at night or whatever, because there's got to be the breaks with it.
I have to have a nap. So your favourite subject, to let you segue into that. I mean, if it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, then I try and do some meditation or some breathing, or I've got a great tapping, emotional freedom technique, EFT video that I listen to and tap through for insomnia. And I'll share that on the link. But so, yeah, if it's 1 or 2 o'clock, then I will try and go back to sleep. But if it's 5, then I do get up. But normally if I'm awake at 5, and that's the problem with actually working, not working for yourself, is I got used to being able to just take a nap if I was feeling weary, I just go and have a little nap with the cat, not a euphemism, and then I'm fine. But now I can't do the nap thing.
Well, so we will segue into that. So just the other couple of things that I was going to say is that from the emotional perspective, because the tapping will equally play into the emotional piece to this, but the other one is the gratitude journal. Even if you haven't got time to be doing, a whole host of things, even if it's just one word and not to be put onto your phone, actually the somatic art or practice of writing it down and putting it in a jar, whatever it might be. Because again, if you said, I'm keeping a gratitude journal on my phone, that defeats the object of getting away from the screen time. But the art of writing is a somatic practice. And then, of course, you've always got your jar of gratitude that you can get out. Because the other thing that I've had happen to me quite a lot when my brain is really overactive is I will be wide awake at 3. And I don't want to get up at that time, but I do want to get it out of my head, because I can have that moment of, oh God, that was such a brilliant idea. I've got to stay awake so I don't forget it, which brings me on to another part of the science, because you actually have your most creative ideas when you're asleep. So it's like, so that explains it. So I do have a notebook in my bedside drawer, and if it happens, I will be up, even if I'm writing in the dark, but I will somehow try to write it down without disturbing Ash, so that I can then go, okay, right, it's not forgotten. I hope I can read it in the morning because I've done it in the pitch black, but I've put pen to paper somehow and it's there, but it's gone. So I can then try and get back to sleep. So that was just another.
That's a great idea. And I can attest to that if anyone's listening that some people will be like, wow, it doesn't happen very often, but the sort of 3 or 4 times I have been woken up with just, the brilliant idea or the perfect advocacy point or whatever it is that I'm working on. And then I'm lying there going with it, just repeating it in my head so that I don't forget it. If I haven't had a pen and paper, then I do write it on my phone. But the pen and paper thing, obviously, because the moment you turn your phone on, all that light going into your brain actually wakes you up as well, so you're going to really struggle to go back to sleep.
Just wakes you up even more. So I don't know what it is, because I can sort of like get the reason for creativity happening when you're asleep. If somebody knows the answer to this, will they please tell me why on earth the other place I get my most creative thoughts are when I'm in the shower? Because again, not a place to be able to write things down very easily, and it's like trying to run out covered in soap suds before I forget. My notebook can look a bit soggy sometimes as well.
You're going to have to Google a waterproof notepad now and have it in your shower, Bobby.
I am. Or some kind of whiteboard in the shower. So I can be like washing my hair with one hand and writing something down on the other. Just like spurious, but yes, there we go. So anyway, let's segue into naps because whilst you say, it's a bit tricky to not have them at work, there are companies now who have got specially designed chairs that they call nap pods. So we should be working for Nike or Pizza Hut, basically, because they are now...
How can you make pizza while you're asleep?
I have no idea, but, maybe headquarters rather than that. But they have put nap pods in. So whilst we've been talking about World Sleep Day, the US actually have National Napping Day as well. It's like super. I do love an awareness day. But there was some research that I picked up in an article I was actually reading, and they had surveys and said that at least 34% of Americans take daily naps. And so they were talking about John F. Kennedy, who used to take them in the afternoon, NASA pilots taking flight naps as short as 26 minutes, because this was an interesting point about how long you should actually nap for, and seemingly a 26-minute nap to enhance performance and alertness by 34% and a 16% increase in reaction time. It's like, oh my God. Whilst I am not of a mantra of I can sleep when I'm dead anymore, which I'm pretty sure that I used to be when I was younger, but I just couldn't do it now. I am not an avid afternoon napper, and in fact I'll leave the study and go out, and Ash will have stopped work, he'll be on the sofa and he's fast asleep, looking as peaceful as hell, and I feel like going and throwing something all over him to wake him up, because I'm so jealous that he can do that and feel better afterwards, whereas I go and have a nap and I feel like utter shite.
I can't nap for 26 minutes though. I kind of end up like waking up 2 hours later.
Again, the science I read on this, the National Sleep Foundation says that 30 minutes or less of catnapping can restore alertness, enhance performance and reduce mistakes and accidents. So between 20 and 30 minutes means that you actually wake up energised, and whilst 60 minutes or more can be rejuvenating, you can be super groggy. And I know when I'm going into that low ebb around about 3 o'clock or whatever it might be in the afternoon. So there was a whole host of things about that way that you should go about it. So a bit like the things that you were talking about from your sleep routine, for a nap perspective, you should put in absolutely the same sort of environment. So get rid of the lights, get rid of the phones, get rid of the alerts, but set an alarm so that you don't sleep for too long. And seemingly 26 minutes is the optimum, which I think is quite hilarious, because if I go back to all those episodes ago when we were talking about different techniques to stop procrastination, Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes. So, you could make it 25. So it's one of your Pomodoros is to nap in an afternoon to see you rejuvenated.
So I know that, and Mohammed says the same thing. He says, oh, just go and take a half-hour nap. And I'm just like, I can't do that. Because if I set the alarm, I just lie there and I'm not asleep. And then just as I'm kind of thinking, can feel myself drowsing off, the alarm goes and I'm like, bollocks. But I think that even that taking the time out of just lying there, whether you are actually asleep or not, can be an element of rejuvenation. For me, I need to be in the dark, so I have a sleep mask and earplugs because my beloved husband snores like a warthog. And currently I don't have to put earplugs in, so I can sleep without earplugs because he's several thousand miles away. And I don't need to have an eye mask because I'm living in a lovely place that it's got shutters, which I adore. If I ever buy my forever house, it's going to have bloody shutters on it because that light really makes a difference. Although I read something weirdly, and I'm just remembering it now or maybe I heard it, and so I'll have to find it to put it in the thing, that Gen Z they can't sleep in silence. They really struggle. And obviously we're doing a massive generalisation here. I'm not trying to start a generation war, but just had heard or seen somewhere that Gen Z really struggle to sleep without any noise. And I'm sure there's a reason for that, but I don't know what it is.
I was just thinking back then. So when I'm in the UK, I sleep with the windows open and the curtains open. And I'm very used to that old-fashioned way of almost like going to bed when it gets dark. Not quite that bad. We know we're not living in times where we're wandering around with a bleeding candle. It's not quite that bad. But then being awakened by bird song and when it gets light. So I'm often awake much earlier in the summer than I am in the winter. I grew up in the countryside, surrounded by fields. We didn't have curtains and the windows open for fresh air the whole time. But in Spain, I've got shutters and it's pitch black. And of course you can't then have the windows open because of mozzies and what have you, that I tend to sleep for longer there and in more of a routine. I'm just talking to myself here going, why the hell don't I do that for myself in the UK as well? But the other thing, that business of noise, that when I was working full time, and this hasn't been the case with my sleep pattern since I've been working for myself, but I used to listen to Michael McConaughey every night telling me a story, which is very, very lovely. Yeah, I used the meditative stories, which were just gorgeous. And you've got, what's his face, Harry Styles on there as well. Lovely. So yes, this is turning into a very different episode than we were planning. But the Calm app and listening to stories sometimes really help me to get to sleep and get out of my head. But almost for myself, in terms of that voice that you use on yourself, and we've talked about this in other episodes as well, that 3 o'clock stint where I would be going, for God's sake, what are you doing awake? And like really having a go at myself. Whereas now it's a case of, okay, I'm awake, but I can be resting. I am resting. My body's resting. I'm resting. Count to 10, actually counting sheep, almost like a child, self-soothe myself back to sleep because I'm not giving myself such horrendous self-talk anymore about it as well.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends, and actually myself too, when I was going through the menopause, fuck me, just couldn't sleep. that's part of the reason why I was insane and so fucking angry. It wasn't just because of the hot sweats and all the other hormonal business going on, but it was also because I wasn't getting any fucking sleep and I was knackered. And I've got quite a lot of friends who really struggled with insomnia, like proper insomnia. Like mine was just disturbed sleep because I was too hot, I was too cold, I was too hot, I was too cold. And progesterone, once I got onto progesterone, actually taking progesterone before I went to bed helped, because it's a mild sedative, so it helped sleep. Magnesium I find helpful, so taking my magnesium supplement at night usually helps me sleep. My friends who have real insomnia, that's the one thing that they say, is that they get themselves so wound up about it, as you say, that voice, and they're just getting so angry and upset, and they're getting more and more frustrated, and then, you know, of course it turns into a cycle, and of course they can't get to sleep. And you're absolutely right, the times where I've just gone, yeah, you know what, my eyes are closed, my body's resting, it's fine. It's a little bit more difficult when you've got a snoring husband next to you, because you then hate him because he's asleep and you're not. But if you can get rid of that voice too, the one where you want to stab him or smother him with a pillow, then yeah, I think that this, just being kind to yourself and just going, it is what it is, it's fine, it's one night, it doesn't matter, is really important. And I'm not suggesting to anyone who really suffers from chronic insomnia that, hey, you know, why don't you just do this, because they'll want to stab me too, because they'll be like, do you not think I've thought about that? So I feel for people who suffer from insomnia. But when I have the sort of just that, you know, once in a while thing where I'm awake, absolutely the solution is to just let it go, be frozen, whatever that song is. I'm not going to attempt to sing it.
I certainly wouldn't want to be on here professing to be any kind of therapist for people with chronic insomnia. I grew up with a mother who was in a narrative of she never slept. She had her sleep broken. I kid you not. So she would say, I had my sleep broken when your granddad was terminally ill and your brother was a toddler. And because of those two things, I have never slept properly since. And when I started doing my work, I was at pains to be saying, Mum, are you listening to the story that you are telling yourself, and the one that you have peddled for yourself for over 30 years to keep yourself awake at night? And I know that she had all of that cortisol. I definitely have done that to myself with stress. And of course, now it's a case of how the hell do I get rid of it now that I've done it to myself? Because I know that I'm not in that same level of stress anymore. But I firmly believe that I think we can be in particular narratives. And I really hope that people who have got chronic insomnia are trying to get themselves the help that they really need, because I think that there is a definite part of it that can be the stories that we live in, or the narratives that we live in, just from personal experience and from seeing it in others and from people I've coached. So as I say, I'm not professing to be like the be all and end all with that, but I think it's a starting point.
Going back to another thing that you said actually about having your windows open, and I'm lucky because I've got fly screens, so when it gets warm enough I will have my windows wide open to get fresh air in. And I remember there's some kind of jokey stereotype about Germans, about them always having their windows open to have fresh air. For sleeping, they're absolutely obsessed with having windows open, and actually I'm kind of with them. I want to have windows open. And again, another thing, I can't remember where, I've seen all this stuff about sleep recently and not written it down, but the advice is to have a cold room and a warm bed to sleep. So I can't sleep with cold feet. If my feet are cold, I have to put socks on. Even if I'm butt naked, the rest of me, I will be sexy as hell. Me naked with a pair of socks in bed. My poor husband. Sorry, Mohammed.
Again, I hope that nobody is starting this podcast episode partway through, because then they'll be like, what the heck? I thought they were talking about leadership.
Lead in your socks. You always need a pair of socks.
I thought this was meant to be about leadership, and now Bridget is naked with socks on. God alive. I can feel a very lovely A image.
Anyway, you have to have socks And then I have to, like, hot water bottle. I remember a time when we had no heating and Mohammed had just moved to Ireland and our boiler packed up and it was just got really, really cold and it was absolutely fucking bitter. And the cat was under the duvet. We had 2 duvets on the bed and Mohammed experienced hot water bottles for the first time and he was like, these are amazing. So we put hot water bottles in the bed. We were going to bed fully clothed, like with all of our clothes on. I think at one point I had a hat on and gloves because Mohammed's like, I think that's a little bit of overkill, darling. And I'm like, no, that's it. I'm just like got down to just my eyes peeking out. But I have to be warm in bed, but I like the room to be cold because if the room's not cold, then I get too hot. So it's very odd, but cold room, warm bed.
That's the same as us. Heated blanket on, but the window open. And then I'm the one that has to get up first thing in the morning to shut the window so that Mr. Davis is then warm enough when he gets out of bed. Because I just don't feel the cold in the same way that he does. But I am convinced that there are health benefits around that as well. But it's how I've grown up and it's how I... I need to sleep, going and staying in hotel rooms. Oh my God, when you can't open a window in the morning, my head just feels like it's been put in a vice. But, other than being a naked leader in socks, let's talk about leadership and what a leader looks like, when they're well rested in a particular situation and when they're sleep deprived. So there's a few things. So what would you say is the impact on a team when you've got a well-rested leader versus a sleep deprived? I can't even say that. Sleep deprived leader in socks.
Yeah. From my experience, both as a recipient of leadership and as a doling out of leadership. I don't know when apart from my husband has ever seen me naked apart from a pair of socks, but I hope. Well, actually, anyway, moving on. I think that it relaxes people because if the leader is at ease, then the team tends to be at ease. There's a tension, and it's not just sleep relaxed. It's also holiday relaxed, whatever it is. So I know I came back on Monday from having had a week off work. I really was ready to have that week and come back on Monday, feel, okay, walk into the office, all the shitstorm of lots of political stuff that's going on lands straight on my desk and I'm just going, oh, welcome back, Bridge. But actually I can cope with it because I've got that resilience to go, still smile, still go, okay, we can deal with this. This is fine. And everyone who's looking to you can see that it's fine. But if I am at the end of my 8-week rotation, then, by that stage, I'm stressed, I'm tired, I have lost the ability to maybe put things into perspective. And so then people are on edge because they can see I'm stressed. They don't want to bring me bad news because it's another piece of bad news. And also just one point that there's another science thing. If you are sleep deprived, your reflexes and behaviour is impacted as if you're drunk. That's why obviously driving when you're exhausted is so dangerous, not just because you fall asleep, but because your ability to react, your cognitive reflexes are not so, as you said, decision making, all of those things. It impacts on the team because you are not at your best, whether it's because you haven't had leave or because you haven't had sleep.
And I think that one of the things that you're saying about trying to role model good sleep routines, I guess I have also been the role model of what to do when you haven't had a good sleep routine. So probably more so latterly, Jesus, I feel sorry for some of the teams that I actually had when I was sleep deprived and quite how irascible and ratty I was. Because I can be irascible and ratty even when I'm well rested as well. Then I like to call it passionate, but equally, whichever way we want to look at it, I know that I have a bit of a short fuse, but I guess that when I'm well rested, I can go, I can catch myself in it. And I think that the learning has been to catch myself in it when I'm knackered. And I think I've probably said it on other recordings when I've sort of like said to the team, actually, I'm just going to have a quiet day today. I'm working, but this isn't the day for me to make any decisions or anything like that. And the interesting thing, because I know that I want to try and get us to do an episode around cycles. Now, I know that we don't necessarily have cycles anymore of the age that we actually are, but they do play a part. And gentlemen, you know, we're not going to go super woo-woo, but the fact remains that there is some level of science out there that talks about what our energy looks like at different parts within a moon cycle or within a cycle. And whilst that might not be the thing that we're leading with any more than saying to people, go and get your star signs into your leadership strategy, I think it is about people being aware of what their energy looks like. So knowing when you're knackered and just saying, today is not the day for us to be doing a strategy meeting or making massive decisions. I need to take a step away, and it may well be tomorrow, it may well be the day after. So I think that that's self-awareness. We don't need to lead with cycles, but we do need to lead with self-awareness about what our energy is looking like. So that brings me on to, what do we think that the distinctions look like when we as leaders are performing under pressure, when we're well rested versus sleep deprived? What do you reckon to that one? I love putting you on the spot like this.
Yay. I was going to say, do you know what? I have, this is a power cut and I've got no electricity, which is true, but I've got about 10 minutes left on my battery. So yeah, no excuse there. I'm going to be doing this by candlelight in a minute because you can see that it's getting darker and darker. Anyway, yeah, I think it's very similar in the fact that in terms of having to deal under pressure when you're tired, it's just more difficult. It's just another layer of difficulty. And especially when we think that sleep deprivation impacts on emotional regulation, then I think that that's a really significant impact that, you know, generally, and again, this does come back to resilience. If you're able to emotionally regulate, you're self-aware, and you have got that energy to be able to self-regulate, then you can deal with whatever VUCA thing has come into your horizons. And obviously, if you are less well rested or you're just exhausted, it becomes much more difficult, and you have to put more effort and energy into maintaining your emotional regulation. And I think that point about self-awareness is super important. And again, and I've sort of been very clear that, you know, I've sort of taken 2 years out of this and done quite a lot of work on boundaries and looking at emotional regulation and about self-care and prioritizing self-care. And I'm much more aware now of where I am in terms of my emotional regulation, in terms of my energy levels, in terms of my resilience. I can feel it, like, you know, I knew I was tired this morning when I went in, and I was just there going, oh fuck, I'm just really not looking forward to having to deal with all of this shit today, hence why I put my fuck this shit necklace on, which was a slight warning to everyone. But actually, I'm still have got something in the bank because I've had a week's leave, and so, you know, I've still got enough energy to be able to regulate. So I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. But I still went home earlier from work today because I could feel my energy levels dipping, and I knew I had work to do, and I knew I'd do it better. Well, I thought I would, until I came home and found I had no electricity. But I came home to be able to do some work without having to also be nice to people, if that makes sense, because it takes energy. And so I thought, I want to direct my energy to the priority and just tell people that I'm going to work from home this afternoon because I'm knackered and I just need just to be able to relax a bit while I'm working.
There's so much wrapped up in that as well. So, you know, if we're under pressure, if we're working with teams, the want and the desire to keep them on side, to keep connected with them. And when either you or I have been a ratty old bag who wants to lead with fuck this shit, you know, that's not exactly particularly collaborative. But equally, the well-rested leader has a much greater level of self-perception as to what they need and are able to ask for it. And then the other two things, you know, I mentioned at the beginning about this business of creativity, and that rather counterintuitively, we are more creative when we're asleep. I'm like, that's excellent. But the reason for trying to get everything written down, but that need for well-rested to be able to deal with things that are non-negotiable, that are strategic, that are high-pressured, you know, in particularly in the environment that you're in right now, that is a great reason for being well rested. But the other thing that I saw was about this research that I found which says that how much more collaborative a team can be who are well rested. And I think that points back to the point of emotional regulation. And you made this point about how much more regulated, or, you know, how much more in touch you are with your emotions. Because if you're well rested, then your EI, your emotional intelligence, kicks in that much more. So you are then able to be focusing not just on self, but the others around you as a leader. Whereas I think when you're under pressure and when you're tired, and I know this from my own personal experience, the world can seem very small, and then sometimes doesn't seem like any other fucker in there with you. You know, you can feel very, very alone, and that level of the pressure and that self-perception of that I am on my own, I'm not doing well, you know, a limited self-image, all of those sort of like elements can be affected by a lack of sleep as well, which I think are well worth considering within your leadership strategy for yourself and within organisations.
Yeah, really, a really, really important point. And that's why this idea of self-care, resting, sleep, and boundaries to be able to allow people to take some form of respite, even if it isn't sleeping. It's not fluffy, it's not selfish, it's not indulgent. It's absolutely fundamentally necessary for good operations, efficient, effective operations. If you're literally going to think of it in terms of just operations rather than well-being of people, it's absolutely fundamentally necessary for everybody, and particularly for leaders, and it's really important for leaders to model it as well. But it's really important for leaders to do it for themselves so that they can lead properly.
Absolutely. Here endeth the lesson on sleeping and napping. Whilst we're here recording this for others, we have to be really careful about ourselves, because I think both of us have vast experience of when we've got it right, but also vast experience of when we've got it wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm, actually paid with burnout for me in my case. So now I'm much more careful about it, and people may think that it's self-indulgent, but it's not, because I know what happens if you don't do it.
No. I really wish that we videoed our podcast as well, because I just love everybody to be, and before we go, I am going to take a picture of this, because I might actually just use this for the thing, because here's me in bright daylight looking all perky, and it looks like Bridget is about to go to sleep because she's in pitch black. And so she's saying it's there's no electricity. I think she's off to bed. So
I really wish I was, but I've got some more stuff to do. But I will be going to bed early tonight because I am tired. But yeah, the sun's starting to go down, and because I've got no electricity, I now look like
I can't see you. I literally can't see you. This is just hilarious. So whether she's pretending to go off and work, or whether she really is going to bed or not, I am going to draw this to a close. Oh, it's just making me chuckle with a quote. So I think this one plays very nicely, and it's by somebody called E. Joseph Kosman. And the quote goes, "The best bridge between despair and hope is a good night's sleep." There we have it. Anyway, on that note, good night.
Yeah. Night.
Well, if you're still awake, thanks for listening. You'll find all the resources we mentioned in this episode on your podcast platform of choice, so you can read, listen, watch and dive in deeper whenever you fancy. So next week, we're adding another layer to how we show up as leaders, this time through the power of storytelling and language. Because words aren't just words, they too carry energy. The stories we tell about ourselves, our teams, our challenges shape what we believe is possible. So how do we use language more intentionally? How do we tell better stories, ones that inspire, connect and move people forward? And how do we make sure the words we choose serve not just others, but ourselves too? So come and join us next time for Being the Story.